Welcome to today's explainer. We're taking the leap from basic GPU concepts straight into engineering robust, real-world CUDA applications. If you already know that GPUs offer massive parallelism, well, today is all about harnessing that power safely and efficiently. Let's dive right in. We've got a great roadmap for today. We're going to master threads and blocks, handle arbitrary vector sizes, coordinate the host and device, look into just-in-time Python compilation, and finally, matrix and vector multiplication.
Section 1. Mastering Threads and Blocks, the Foundation.
Okay, let's step onto the factory floor of the GPU, where we get that massive parallelism by organizing our work into grids of blocks and threads. The formula we use here is literally the golden rule for assigning unique IDs to our parallel workers. See, in a massive grid, you can't just rely on a simple thread ID, because threads are grouped into blocks. So to pinpoint exact data in a 1D array, we combine the thread index, the block index, and the block dimension. It's kind of like finding a specific seat in a massive stadium, right? You need the section number, the number of seats per section, and the specific seat number. That is exactly what this formula is doing for us.
Now, that formula works beautifully in a perfect world, but here's the real uh-oh moment. Real-world data sizes are almost never neat multiples of 512 or 1024. If you have an array of 1,000 elements, and you're using blocks of 512 threads, 2 blocks give you 1,024 threads. So what happens to those extra 24 threads when our array doesn't perfectly fit our block layout?
Section 2. Handling arbitrary vector sizes, beating the bounds.
To solve this messy reality of arbitrary data sizes, we actually have to refactor how we launch and control our kernels. We tackle this mathematically on the host side first. Take n as our total data size and m as our threads per block. By just adding m-1 before dividing by m, we force the integer division to round up. That guarantees we create enough blocks to cover every single element in our array, even if that very last block isn't entirely full of meaningful work. But wait, rounding up creates idle workers at the end, right? We literally just generated threads that don't have any corresponding data. So to fix this, we implement a simple guard clause right inside the kernel itself. By wrapping our execution logic in an if index is less than n statement, we actively prevent those extra threads from making illegal, out-of-bounds memory accesses. It's a super simple but incredibly elegant security checkpoint for your memory. Moving on to Section 3. Coordinating host and device, the asynchronous dance.
Operating a CPU and a GPU together is essentially like managing two different brains. The CPU is synchronous and impatient, and it has to coordinate with the GPU, which is this massive asynchronous workhorse. Whenever you launch a kernel on the GPU, control actually returns to the CPU instantly. The CPU just keeps running while the GPU is off doing the heavy lifting. So our tools for data transfer operate a bit differently here. A standard CUDA memcopy physically blocks the CPU. The CPU sits and waits until the copy is totally finished. But the asynchronous version, CUDA memcopy async, lets the CPU fire off that copy command and immediately run ahead to do other tasks.
Now, because kernel launches return control instantly, you can run into a major issue where the CPU tries to read a result from the GPU before the GPU has even finished calculating it. Obviously, no good. That's exactly why we use CUDA device synchronize. Think of it as the ultimate traffic light. When the CPU hits this command, it stops entirely, forcing the host to wait until all preceding CUDA operations on the device are 100% complete.
Section 4. Just-in-time Python compilation, CUDA without C++.
Up to this point, we've been deep in C++ syntax. But guess what? C++ isn't the only way to write these instructions. Python developers can actually leverage these exact same mechanics dynamically using JIT, or just-in-time compilation. It compiles Python code into optimized machine code for NVIDIA GPUs right at runtime. You've got Numba, which uses a really simple @CUDA.JIT decorator for on-the-fly compiling. If you like standard arrays, CuPy gives you a completely NumPy-compatible interface running CUDA under the hood. And for the real power users, PyCUDA gives you deep, fine-grained control over the API, memory, and context, giving you near C++ level flexibility straight from Python.
Section 5. Matrix and Vector Multiplication, Evolution of a Kernel.
Let's tie all of this together for our climax today: threads, blocks, synchronization, and progressively build an advanced matrix and vector multiplication kernel. Creating each element of a product matrix C from matrices A and B is fundamentally just doing a vector dot product, row times column. Because we're calculating an n by n matrix, that means we have n squared entirely independent inner products to calculate. And whenever you hear the word independent in computing, you should instantly think, okay, this is ripe for parallelism. So, how do we tackle a single inner product? Our initial parallelization strategy is simple, but it works. We farm out the multiplication of each corresponding pair across parallel threads, so they all happen at the exact same time. Then, once those products are calculated, we gather them up and just sequentially sum the results to get our final value. If we step into the code, we first define our inner product kernel, taking our arrays A, B, and C. Then, over in our host code's main function, we launch this kernel across our predefined grid and block dimensions, using that classic triple chevron syntax we talked about earlier. Deconstructing the kernel itself, notice the __ global qualifier. This explicitly tells the compiler that this code runs on the device, but is called from the host. Right below that, we grab our built-in threadidx.x iterator, which gives each thread its unique assignment for the multiplication phase. And look, we even have our guard clause checking if I is less than size to keep that memory access perfectly safe.
Finally, we reach the summation phase, and this requires some careful coordination. Since our threads are parallel, we absolutely have to make sure every single multiplication is finished before we start adding them together. We handle this by copying our product data to a highly visible shared memory space, and then we call _sync threads. It acts like a localized traffic light just for that block. Once everyone is caught up, we simply assign thread 0 to sequentially reduce the sum with a standard for loop.
Now, you probably caught that. This final summation works perfectly, and it's a great milestone for showing how memory and synchronization tie together. But it hands the final reduction over to a single thread. It's essentially sequential, right at the finish line. So I want to leave you with a provocative thought. As your skills evolve, how are you going to push these algorithms even further? How will you replace this single thread bottleneck with a fully parallel reduction tree in your next build? Keep that in mind as you continue exploring CUDA. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and we'll catch you next time.